That's the way it feels to me.
Wow. Tom, so good to have you, brother. I'm like, we were just having such a wonderful little, sweet little momentary catch up.
Yeah, we were. We were. I was telling a friend the other day about, because I told him that I was doing this thing with you, and and she said, "Well, who is Satyen?" And I said, "Well, to me, Satyen and Suzanne kind of come in a group because I met them both at the same time." And I'll never forget because within 5 minutes, I felt connected to you and Suzanne. And then when she gave me the hint that she called your parents my father in love, my mother in love, I've been doing that ever since. My
Oh,
daughter-in-law, I use Dill, D-I-L. I say, hey, Dill, that means daughter in love.
beautiful, Tom.
And she calls me Phil, F-I-L, father in love.
Oh,
What
it's
an
so heartwarming, right?
beautiful emotion there is to father in love, daughter in love, whatever in love, as opposed to father in law. Where the hell is the joy in that?
Yeah. My friends, I want to welcome you to meet my really good soul brother, Thomas Baylor. Tom has an illustrious career going way back. He's a master musician on many levels, composer, singer, songwriter, artist, author. I consider a man of great wisdom, but I can say, and I can go on about all the artists' lives that you have touched. I'm going to ask you to please share some stories, all right, today for my friends, because every time you share a story, I'm literally like broken open. I'm like, wow. Because you don't just share a story. There's deep wisdom and insight that really has been my joy being with you is I'm always enriched at a soul level.
Yes, that's the way I am with you. This is what we share.
Yeah.
I don't think it could be created. I believe that energies like ours come together naturally. And the only way that we can mess it up is if we doubt or don't trust.
Oh.
And you and I have had the deepest conversations. We've had the most fun conversations. We've share food, we share family, we share, you've invited me to your beautiful events and where I always learn so much from you. And then I say, well, of course I'd learn from Satyen. Yeah, what else would I do? Pretty cool.
Oh, Thomas, please, with my friends here who might not know of your background so much, would you be kind enough to share a little snippet of some of your experiences? And
I've had and have, um, well, quite frankly, from my point of view, I can't imagine having a better life. I was born into a family that was, my father played in the studios way back when in the 30s before I was born. My mom came from the hollers of West Virginia, had no education musically whatsoever. And yet dad always said that mom was the greatest musician in the house. There was a beautiful balance in there. And I had the benefit of both of it. And so music was so prevalent in our family that you get caught up in it. Music touches us in a way that is very unique. And it was wonderful growing up that way. But and at the same time, as much as I love music, I've always loved people. And as I became proficient in music because I was interested, and dad and mom fed our interests. My brother and I, they didn't demand that we do this or demand that we do that. In 45 years, my father never told me what to do. And to me, that is a major statement. Because I watched, there were 40 kids on our block. We were war babies. And I watched the other dads and they would say, you do this, you do this, you need to do this, and you need to concentrate on that. You need to, Yana, my dad never said that. I was guided by questions and suggestions. I mean, for instance, if the garage was pretty funky,
yes,
my dad would say, well, here's what my mom would say. Tommy, here's the broom. Go out and sweep the garage. You know, that's a mom's prerogative. I mean, I think they're full of rules and for a good reason. And I would go out and start sweeping it. 2 minutes later, she'd be out taking the brush and may say, no, 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 do it this way. You know, and I went, okay, Mom, okay, cool. I'll do it your way. Now, my dad would never say, go sweep the garage. He would say, does that garage look messy to you? I said, yeah. He said, you think it could use some attention? I go, yeah. He said, you think maybe you're the guy to do it? And I say, yeah. And by this time, because my mom had taught me how to do it her way, I said, how do you want me to clean it? He said, you're cleaning it any way you want. And he never criticized me if I put a wrench in the wrong place. I noticed, I'd watch him. He would never say a word. He'd just pick it up and put it where it belonged. But you know what? That was a lesson to me, because next time I knew where to put it. And there was never a word spoken. I was never made to feel less than. Wow. I grew up feeling I was okay. And I don't think I appreciated it, because if that's what you know, that's just de rigueur, you know, and this is what you are. But when I look back on my life and say, oh my gosh, I was so fortunate, because I was guided to discovery. And that's the way it was with trumpet. You know, my dad played in the studios with MGM. Well, he played with 4 different studios. And he was a day player. You know, I mean, they hired him for the day. And he had a great job and he loved it. And Dad loved playing trumpet. So even on the weekends, I would see him in the living room playing. And I was a little boy, about 3 years old, and I'd glance around the corner and I would see him playing. And when he took a breath, he'd open his eyes, but just enough for me to see that there was rapture in his eyes. And at 3 years old, I don't know what rapture means. All I know is that I want some of that.
Yes.
And a couple of years of that, when I was 5, I said, Dad, I want to play the trumpet. And like you do. And he said, cool. Now you realize that with every opportunity comes an equal responsibility.
Mm.
So this is conversational, you know, it's not like, you know, yada, yada. Well, he goes here. And I said, what does that mean? He said, well, I'm all for you playing trumpet, but if you're going to play, I think you need to practice 5 days a week. And I said, okay, what does that mean? How long? And he said, well, you're 5. I'd say 10 minutes a day. So I did my 10 minutes, and then it went to 20, and then it went to 30. And, you know, and so he encouraged me. He didn't say, son, you need to learn your scales. You need to learn how to play this. He'd come in, and by the way, he hired a teacher for us. And I said, Dad, you're such a great trumpet player. Why don't you teach us? He said, I'm your father. I'm not your teacher. I may be your mentor too. I could do that, but I'm not your teacher. So all the way along, he was guiding me to think for myself, to consider things. And he would drop things like, I remember we were talking about, and they were never edicts that he had delivered, but they ended up being so meaningful to me. I remember him saying to me that, he said, my feelings are my best barometer. This was in the middle of a conversation about something. And I'm like, why did you do this? And he said, because I felt like it. It felt right to me. And I said, so you trust that, or whatever. And he said, well, my feelings are my best barometer. I learned that things work out best that way. I consider ideas and other people's opinion. But I have found that I go back to my own feelings and I thank them for caring about me. And then I do what feels right to me. So I was.
Wow, that's such a beautiful imprint,
It was.
Fostering your own direction, your own inner feeling of truth and what direction to follow.
Yes.
It's very atrophied in a lot of people because they were continuously told what to do.
And that's what I loved about Dad. Never told me what to do. At the same time, he never answered a freaking question. Never answered a question. So it wasn't an easy route.
Yes.
But he gently guided me. I'd say, Dad, I got a flat tire. And he'd say, what do you want? And I think I've annoyed him,
Yes.
I was 5 years old and I said, I'm sorry. And he got down on his knees or on his haunches. So he's looking me straight in the eye. I love this. My grandmother, his mother, and Dad did this with me all the time I was growing up. When they were talking to me, they didn't talk to me from above. They came down human to human.
Wow.
And he would say, so I said, Dad, my tire is flat. And he said, what do you want? And I say, oh, I'm sorry, And he gets on his haunches and he looks me in the eye and he says, listen to my words, son. What do you want? Well, that changes my perspective. This isn't about him and me. This is about what I want. I want my tire not to be flat. And he goes, great. What are you going to do about it? And I'm like, I don't know. And he said, but if you did know, which even at that age, I understood to use my observation and to look at it. And I saw the tire was loose on the rim. And I said, I guess that tire needs to come off the rim. And he said, great. How are you going to do that? I don't know. And I look down at the fork and I see that there are two nuts holding the wheel on. I said, I guess those nuts have to come out. He says, great, I'll get you a wrench. So he's present the whole time. And yet, is he telling me what to do? He's guiding me to experience. So he brings back the wrench and he said, son, you're 5, I'll loosen it. Loosens it just enough for me to manipulate, stands by, crosses his arms, and smiles at me. So I take the nuts off, and then I realize there's a lock washer, and under that is a flat washer, and I don't even know the names of these things at that point. And I said, Dad, there's so many parts, I don't know how I'm going to ever get this back together. And he said, I have a suggestion. So, okay. You're 2 feet from a wall. If I were doing this, I would take the nuts and put them next to the wall. Then I'd take the lock washers and put them next to the nuts. And then the flat washer next to the, and I worked my way back with all the parts until I ran out of parts. And then after we fixed the flat, start with the parts next to you, work your way back to the wall. A 5-year-old can understand this. And, after we did it and Dad fixed the flat and he told me while he was doing, he said, son, this takes a little more dexterity. So I want you to just watch what I'm doing. He didn't say, this is the way you do it. In fact, Dad had another pet phrase. He said, if somebody tells you this is the way, run the other way. It doesn't exist. So I was raised with this. It's beautiful, isn't it?
Yeah, beautiful. Beautiful. And I can see it sometimes it might have been frustrating. Maybe I would have wanted and yearned for, hey, can you give me some direction? But, even through all of that, I would, at this stage, will have been well formed in my capacity to make my own choices and figure things out on my own.
Yes. And you know what kept me from saying, Dad, just give me the answer? He was so present with me. He was there. He just wasn't going to tell me what to do. And this was a family way. And I didn't realize it until later that this is the way we guide. And you know that I wrote, that I wrote Anything is Possible, A Tale of Aesop. Well, I wrote that because I was introduced through Dad. I was introduced to Aesop when I was 3 years old. And I became so enamored with the way he told stories. And then when I was older, he said, son, I think I know why you love these stories. We owned a record store at the time. And he used to have the guy around the record store bring us any new albums that came in. And I'm not talking about I'm not talking about pop music. I'm talking about the albums were from Warner Brothers, and it was called Reader Records. And they would send you classic stories starring Bugs Bunny and Elmer Fudd and the whole Looney Tunes group. And they were all drawn beautifully. It was a beautiful way to teach us how to learn to lead, to want to learn to live. To read. So anyway, he sent me this story, and it was Bugs Bunny and the Tortoise. And everybody knows the story of the hare and the tortoise.
Yes.
And the tortoise won because the hare went to sleep, yada, yada. But Bugs is the star of Looney Tunes. So they had to treat it a little differently. So even though he fell asleep, they painted the tortoise as kind of being a little bit of a crook. And he cheated some ways. And even though Bugs fell asleep, he won by an ear. So he barely beat him. And I'm 3 years old, and I'm so excited about this. When my dad comes home, I always greet him, but this time I was really hugging his leg, and he said, what's going on? I said, oh, Dad, I love this story about Bugs Bunny. And he said, oh, I'm so glad you liked it. And he said, you really did like that, didn't you? I said, oh, I love it. And he said, well, maybe you'd like to know this, that it's not a new story. And I said, it's not? And he said, no, that story is at least 2,500 years old.
Wow, yeah.
And I'm like a little kid, and I said, Bugs Bunny isn't 2,500 years old. And he said, you're right, but the story is. And you know what? In the original, the tortoise won. And so I'm ignited. And I said, how can that happen? How could that be? That can't happen. And he goes, I'm going to buy some Aesop's Fables, and we're going to read them together. So from the time I was 3 years old, we read these fables. And when I was 5 or 6, Dad said, son, Aesop is the most quoted, I read the other day, he's the most quoted author in the world. Now, that may seem like a lot, but he had a head start. He lived 600 BC. He said, but I think I know why he is still read today, and why he's still quoted today, and why he still resonates with us. And I said, what's that? He said, he guides us to discovery. And when we discover something, we own it. It's such a different energy.
Yes.
Someone to say 2 and 2 is 4.
Yes.
But if they take 2 apples and add 2 apples, you say 2 plus 2 equals 4. I own that. And Dad, when I was older, actually told me his theory was that discovering is masculine and learning is feminine. That was his, and he would always say, this is the way I see it. He never said this is what is, as I told you. He said, if somebody says this is the way it is, run the other way. But so he'd say, you know how I see it? Would you like to know how I see it? He always asked for permission. Yeah. And it made so much sense because receiving is a feminine trait in terms of life. And when we find something that is attractive to us in terms of a solution to something or a way to do something that is being told to us by others, in his opinion and in mine, it's a feminine thing to accept. Doesn't mean it's not valuable. I mean, it's very valuable and it's wonderful. But if you discovered it, you own it.
Yes.
And I said, can you give me an example? He said, well, for instance, if I were to say to you, you shouldn't lie because if you lie, people won't believe you when you tell the truth. I can only imagine what's going through your head. You're thinking, did I ever lie to Dad? Why does Dad bring this up? Does he think I'm a liar? And he said, you're totally off track to where we were going because you've just been attacked. But if I tell you a story about a little shepherd boy who's watching the flock and he looks down into the village and everybody's partying and he's up there with the with the sheep and there's not much conversation going on and he's lonely and he's cold and he wants validation and he cries woof and the people run from the village to make sure their sheep are okay. And the benefit of that is that he feels validated. He feels valuable. He did something and they all came. And then they say, well, you cried wolf. Where did the wolf go? And the little kid says, well, when he saw you coming, he ran off. And they go, well, of course he did. Of course he did. So they accept that. And he sees that that works. So he starts using it as a ploy. And it doesn't take the village long to realize that this isn't the truth. So when the wolf does come after the sheep and he cries wolf, they don't come. And he said, son, what do you get out of that story? I said that if you lie, people won't tell you, won't believe you when you tell the truth. And he said, but who discovered that? He said, I did. And he said to me, I have yet to forget anything I have discovered. I have easily forgotten over half of what I've learned.
Beautiful.
Different energy.
Beautiful. Oh, beautiful. That's such an example for myself. I believe for all of my friends here, all of us.
Yeah.
To take on and cultivate. And it takes a type of tenderness, a type of sensitivity, a willingness to subjugate your ego and lift someone up underneath them rather than come loom in some way over them.
Yeah.
A very tender way, but it's tender with a strong base.
But that's what I loved him. My dad, there wasn't a meek bone in his body, but he was gentle. But he also put up with no kind of bullshit. And you know what was great? Because I asked questions. That's just who I am. My brother didn't ask questions. And we found this out later in life that we were very different. And in that regard. And but I asked questions to the annoyance of my young friends and my mother, everybody but my dad. But if I asked Dad a question at a time that he wasn't available, he said this to me, not now, son. And at first I was kind of shocked, but then the very first time he did it, soon as he was through, he sought me out. So he was still present.
Yes.
And he said, okay, now I'm here. What was your question? So I learned patience without him saying, be patient. You know, and I just learned so many ways. And again, it was discovery.
Yes. Which
is a different energy than learning. And it's not that one is better than the other. It's just, I prefer discovery. That's
beautiful.
And that's when I discovered when I had a musical gift that I wanted to use that to serve others. Yes. It wasn't about music for me. I don't sit home and practice and go get so jazzed about, oh my God, did you hear this? Did you do that? Now, don't get me wrong. I went to hear Miles Davis. I got to hear some of the bad-ass people on the planet and loved every minute of it. But what I loved about those performances is what they did to the audience. And to me, I want to do that too. I want to touch them in my way. And so that's been my driving force. And that's why this, sort of formula that we grew up with works so well, because my drive is to serve others. And I find that as long as what I do, if the basis is to serve others, it happens. Oh. And when I say I want 5 Ferraris in the driveway, for me, that would be like, why? If I want a Ferrari, that's cool, but, and yet I know guys who have 5 Ferraris in their driveway and they have a good reason for it. So, we're all in different boats.
Yeah. Wow. Talking about how this is of service, when We Are the World came out, mm-hmm. When was that? What year was that?
We recorded January 28th, 1985.
When that came out, I was not even 20 yet, maybe. Mm-hmm. And it just rocked me. It gave me a sense of the world coming together for some greater good. And as a young adult, I was just very moved. And I felt a glimmer. Can you take us back a little there and share some of that experience and what it meant to you? And
yes, I got a call early. I think it was just after the first of the year. Quincy Jones and I were working together a lot. And Quincy was a mentor to me. And yet we also had things that, we covered each other's bases. And let me give you an example of Quincy Jones, the smartest human being I've ever met. One day we were in the studio. When I met him, I was 30, he was 40. And we started working together immediately. And I'm in the studio before he is, and he comes in and I've got my head down like this. Oh, and he goes, "Are you okay?" And I said, "No." He said, "You want to talk about it?" And I said, "Well, I'm at a critical point." And he says, "Oh, or you're critical about the point you're at." Release, dissolve that, all of that. Hello, Suzanne. Oh my goodness. I just want to hug you both. Oh. I'm so happy to see you guys. You taught me daughter in love. You taught me father in love. Yes, I use that.
Come out to one of these interviews, these meetings with my friends. This is the first time, so only for you.
Oh, I am so touched. Thank you. Thank you. I was hoping I would see you.
Oh, me too. I really want to hear your stories. I love your stories.
He's sharing about about Quincy Jones right now.
Oh, yes.
We're talking about We Are the World. Mm-hmm. And Quincy called me. He says, "Man, something just dropped in our lap. Come on over." And he said, and he explained that Bob Geldof had done this great song in England, "Do They Know It's Christmas?" And it's the first time they assembled for a recording a great cadre of the stars in England. And it was a great idea. Everything worked great. Where Geldof realized that he had blown it is that nobody's going to play "Do They Know It's Christmas" in March. So it had a shelf life. And yet it sold 8 million records. And in England, that's huge, crazy, huge. Sold 8 million records in, 3 weeks or something crazy. And yet they knew that there was no future. And this is what I love about Geldof. He thinks, okay, I made a mistake. We need to do this. Let's go across the pond to the big land. So he comes to America because England at the time's 50 million people, you know, we're 250 or whatever it was then. And he gets a hold of Harry Belafonte, and Harry, who was a great performer. And the reason they did was because they're both activists, but they're peaceful, loving activists. They're not like burn the flag, you know, you know, they're like, let's all love one another. So he goes to Harry, and Harry says, let's do a concert. And Bob says, cool. And then Harry turns to Ken Kragen, who's got the greatest stable of artists in the planet. And as you know, we hear a lot of stories about managers. They're great managers. They're managers that steal your money. We've heard all the stories. Ken Kragen is a prince. You know, he's damn near king. And he's such a loving man. And when Harry goes to Ken, of course, very steeped in this whole organization, he says, you know, the thing with the concert is it's done and it's over. We need to make another record. We need to write a new song. And I got Lionel on my, you know, he's one of my clients. Let's have Lionel write the song. So Lionel started writing the song. And then, and Ken's always gone for the best. I mean, he calls the best people there are. And he calls Quincy, he says, hey man, I want you to produce this. And he sends it to Quincy, and Quincy says, I love this. And of course, Quincy's producing Michael at the time. And he says, I think Michael should kiss this. You know? And Ken's like, cool. So he gets it to Michael. Lionel and Michael finish the song. And we decide, because of Geldof had already given us the template by bringing these stars in. Well, we have more stars than, you know, as MGM used to say, more stars that are in the heavens. So we had pretty much had our pick. And so we kind of picked the people that we thought would be the most effective. And that was the thing. And Quincy says, I want you to be the vocal arranger. So I thought, oh my God, this is like vocal arranging in heaven. Oh my God, I got Bruce Springsteen, Michael Jackson, Kenny Rogers, you know, I mean, look at the lineup.
Cyndi Lauper.
And I've been asked, exactly, Cyndi Lauper. And I've been asked, oh my God, was that pressure? I said, there was no pressure. I just wrote what I heard.
You're awesome.
I knew, well, I had worked with a number of the artists, not all of them, but I'd worked with a number of them. Tina Turner, I'd worked with. Billy Joel, I had done in '83, I did the Innocent Man album with him. Anyway, I'd had the glory of working with all of these people. So to me, it was all about what a musical gold mine I've fallen into in terms of talent, in terms of representing this line and that line. And as I looked at the line, the singer came to me. That's the energy I'm talking about, man. I didn't think my way through this arrangement. I don't know, it took me 20 minutes to do it. I went, you know, the first chorus, well, no, Quincy gave me two directions and they were perfect. He said Lionel was the first to write this song, so he should sing the opening line. Great, done. The first chorus, because Michael, and he finished it, Michael should sing the first chorus. And because Michael and Diana are so joined, that she should join him on the second half of the first chorus. And the rest of it's all yours. Go. I went, yay, what fun. I mean, I was exhilarated. It's like getting to play in the best sandbox on the planet. And I heard all the voices, and it was, I'm serious, it took 20 minutes, but that's not thinking. That's why actually there's a chapter in my book that I've written about this, what you want wants you, which is a reiteration of my family's philosophy that I was raised with, was that, and Dad used to say that, what you want wants you, man. And my grandmother used to say it.
Love that.
When you want something, there's a reason for it.
Mm.
And if you claim it and say, I want this, you can tell somebody that. My dad used to say, tell them what you want, son. I said, well, isn't that going to put them off? He said, it'll put them off if you ask them for what you want.
Mm.
If you tell them what you want, they might say, well, good luck.
Mm.
But they don't feel put upon. You've just shared with them a desire.
Mm-hmm.
Or they might say, oh my gosh, my cousin, so-and-so, so-and-so. I have a story. I have a 14-year-old granddaughter who is a spectacular young horsewoman. She won her first national championship when she was 8 years old. And she has two older brothers with whom I'm very close. Every time I'd walk in the room, she'd run out of the room. And I said to my daughter, Wendy, what did I say something? You know, she said, give her time, give her time. So this last Thanksgiving, she came up to me at Thanksgiving and said, Grandpa, do you know who Harry Styles is? And I said, no, sweetie, I don't. And she looked at me, and her look went from kind of a meekish question to a knowing smile that was just sinful. She said, ooh, have I got something for you. She played me Harry Styles. I am crazy about this guy. He is an amazing artist. If you don't know him, I mean, but anyway, he's kicking it, right?
I got to find out who this Harry
Oh,
Styles.
well, you know, just Harry Styles, Styles. And that's the thing is that exactly, I didn't know who he was, but I listened to him and he touched me. And I said, oh my gosh, Hallie. Well, Harry Styles broke the ice between my 14-year-old granddaughter and me.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we were looking for a way to be on common ground.
Mm.
And Harry Styles provided that. And then she said, you know, I already have tickets to his concert. Oh, and she said, may I ask you a favor? And I said, sure, sweetie. She said, I already have concert tickets. I don't need concert tickets, but I know you know a lot of people. Is there any way in the world that I can meet him? And I said, sweetie, I'm going to bat for you. I can't, I'm going to bat for you. I don't know. Let me find out. So I started mining my memory. And I remember this guy named Tom Ross, who's a great agent. He headed up the whole music department for Creative Artists Agency in Beverly Hills, one of the badass at the time, badass agencies. And I called Tom. So this is dealing with, so I said, what I want. What do I want? I want to connect my granddaughter with Harry Styles. And the reason I did is because my granddaughter is as good at what she does with horses as Harry is doing what he does. And I said this to her. I said, I want to connect you because I'm connecting two equals. Oh. And she goes, oh, no. I said, I encourage you to look at it a different way. Look at what you have accomplished. You're 14 years old and you have about 6 or 8 national championships. I mean, this is crazy to us. To you, it's de rigueur. And it's probably de rigueur to Harry too. I am who I am, I do what I do, yada, yada, people love it, I'm happy, right? I want to connect your two energies because I think they are meant to meet each other. And I'm not talking about romantic, I said that's none of my business, but I'm just talking about two people who have accomplished a great deal. So I called Tom, and I'm very apologetic because for some reason in my business, I don't ask people for things. I'm just not comfortable doing it. So I called Tom and I said, Tom, and now he's been retired for 5 or 6 years, maybe 8 years. So he's not even in the business anymore. But I said, Tom, I don't know where to turn. I'm so unlike me to ask you this question, but this is my granddaughter. So I'm sorry. Here, the rules are out. So here's the deal. She wants to meet Harry Styles. She is an amazing young woman. He's an amazing young man. I just want the energies to meet. Can you help me do that? And he said, I can't believe you asked me to do this. And I thought, oh my God, he's going to hang up. And he said, Harry Styles' manager is, I'll think of his last name in a minute because it doesn't really matter. But anyway, Jeff. I've known Jeff since he was born. His father, Irving Azoff, Jeff Azoff. His father, Irving Azoff, who is an iconic agent and manager in this industry. I gave him his first job. Oh. So the answer is yes.
Oh, yes.
And we're in the midst of connecting them right now.
Oh.
So I'm just saying the power of saying what you want, because Tom wasn't put off.
Yeah.
I was afraid to ask him. I said, oh man, I'm sorry to ask you, but I really want to. I want to connect them. And he goes, yeah, well, you came to the right guy.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Oh.
It's like when you're willing to ask for what you want, things come to you. And you have to act, you have to do your actions and follow through. But
yes, actually, and what you just said, and this is semantics, so I'm not disagreeing with you. I don't ask for what I want, I declare what I want. And my dad taught me that, because I asked him, I said, well, do I ask for what I want? And this was it. He said, well, in my opinion, I don't think the universe is in the business of answering questions. I think the universe is in the business of taking orders.
Love it.
You say what you want. So the formula that I grew up with, and it's, I've made it a formula, but this is the way, I mean, it just happened to come together that way. But declare what you want.
Yeah.
Be a good host. Because when Dad said, when you declare, I find that when I declare what I want, I open the door to the universe. And ideas start coming in. And when I was little, I said, well, how do I know if they're good or bad? And he said, well, son, I watch you when we have people over. And if you're attracted to them, you move toward them. If you're not attracted to them, you move away from them. Well, same thing with ideas. If the idea attracts you, you invite it in. Be a good host. And I said, what does that mean, being a good host? He said, well, I love how we have explained things in the way I could understand them at a 6-year-old or 7-year-old, whatever it was. He said, your buddy Georgie comes over, you throw him an apple. That's being a good host. You welcome him into your home. So these ideas that come in are, you're a good host to the ones that feel right. And I said, well, what if I don't understand him? And this is one of his best statements ever. He said, son, I don't think we're supposed to understand them till after. Because if we understood them, they wouldn't be new.
Oh, beautiful.
So I'm a little kid, but you can understand this. And then I said, okay, so I declared what I wanted. I get a bunch of ideas. And you said that the ones that feel good are the ones that you suggested I hang on to. Then what? He said, take action. And I said, but I said that maybe I didn't understand it. He said, good. You still declare that you're taking action on this idea, even though you don't understand it. That's not important, because you give a signal to the universe to then go out and get you the pieces of the puzzle that it's going to take to build this thing. And he said, you know, everything that's not nature began with an idea, and somebody believed it could become a thing. So this is the way I was raised. And at this point in my life, it's become important to me to share it. You know, because once I discovered it, you know, when you grow up with it, I think it's unconscious. When I wrote my book on Aesop, you know, this is when I became aware consciously of all of this amazing way that I was raised and where I was guided to discovery, never discouraged. My dad never said no, but he would make me say no by explaining shit to me.
Yeah.
Like if you're 13, if you get a ticket riding a Cushman motor scooter when you're 15 and a half, you'll be put off. And then I look at that and I say, well, that makes no sense. You know? So am I going to go out and ride a scooter? No, I'm not. But I need permission from a higher power. So that guided me to a different way of doing things. And isn't the way that, to me, this is the way humanity betters itself. Mm-hmm. Is by, and a lot of people do it with parents that are saying, don't do that, that's stupid. We share a wonderful friend, Mary Pines, who's got her doctorate from Cambridge in nuclear biology. And you know how that started? When she was a little girl, she was painting, and her father, who loves her dearly, but who is an attorney, a business attorney, looked at her and said to her, I don't think this is a good use of your time because you'll never make money doing this. Use your time on something that will benefit everyone. And she wanted to be a good daughter. This is her story to me, and I've validated it with her so often, but she wanted to please her dad, and she thought, what else do I like? I love science. So guess what? She went on to science and got her doctorate from Cambridge. Her paintings, we all know, and there's one right behind us now.
Right now, I just put it on my background scene.
Yes, yes. Mary has never had input on how to paint. She never had a lesson. She never had somebody saying, oh, no, don't do the brush stroke. This is the way you do this. This is the way you do that. This is the way what people do when they teach you. And when they're showing you this is the way, which my dad gave me permission to say, I'm running the other way. That's what happened with Mary. She has become such a unique and beautiful, in my estimation, a beautiful artist, and has fed our spirits. Look at this painting here. And she never had a lesson.
This painting, she, I gave her the intention. I said, please paint the path of the warrior sage. And she knows about our life. She's a friend of ours, and she's also has studied some of our work.
I met her through you.
And then she came up with this beautiful creation, which has so many elements of our experience.
Yes.
Over the last many, many years.
Well, and that's it. And you gave her the perfect, in my opinion, you gave her, I want you to paint the philosophy of the warrior sage. She took it from there. You didn't say, I see a this and I see a that. Now you're telling her what are pretty brushstrokes. And I think that is disaster. The best directors I've ever worked for scoring film is somebody who says, I want them to feel this here. Mm-hmm. And it's not on screen. Mm. So that's music's job, to come in. Quincy calls it emotion lotion. And to come in but I've had directors who also are trying to speak to me in musical terms, and most of them, I say to them, you know what? I'm not going to tell you how to direct your picture because you're the director. Mm. Tell me what you want. Mm. It's my job to deliver it to you.
Yes.
Not to give a running flute thing or a this and that and a big bass line and that stuff. If you're going to do that shit, score it yourself. Mm-hmm. But tell me what you want, and I'll use my gifts to give you what you want. And you know how many times that's failed? Big zero.
Oh. I want you to tell the story of Barbra Streisand.
Oh, when she scratched my back?
Yeah.
Well, first of all, I want to say, because when I grew up and came into business, I think Barbara and I are about the same age. I may be older than her, but I mean, we were both sort of contemporaries. But I have never wanted, I've always wanted to be behind the scenes. It's not my thing. I want to use my gifts to help people who have the courage to stand up in front of others. That's not one of my things, but I appreciate the people who do. And women in the 60s, you know, if you had an opinion, you were a bitch. You know, it was still very patriarchal. And what I loved about Barbara and Diana Ross is that they had the courage to stand up to that. And yes, they did get labeled. And I would hear from my coworkers, "Oh my God, you're doing it for the Barbara will kick your ass." I said, "I'll thank you for your input. I'll make that decision." You know? I just know that I love her as a singer and I honor her as an artist. Let's walk in with that. Not about how much trouble she's going to give over my vocal arrangement or the way I'm going to sing. That's your experience. I'm thinking in my mind, that's the way I process it. I'm going to go in with a blank page. You're one of my favorite singers ever. And what do you want? And my brother had done a great, my brother's a great vocal arranger. He and I both do this. And we loved it when clients would call and say, "Get me one of the Baylor brothers." That was our favorite thing, is that we were interchangeable in a way. But he became Barbara's favorite, and he was doing these arrangements for her Butterfly album. And John, because he was writing the arrangements, wanted me to hire the voices and handle that into it. And we started running the arrangements, and the door was open. Barbara was there for the vocals, which background vocals, most artists don't bother. But Barbara is one of those people from soup to nuts, man. She wants to know what's going on. And I love that about her. And she ingests it, and she makes great suggestions. And anyway, I honor that she was so involved. And she tells my brother that she doesn't like the arrangement. And my brother and I are different in that way. When somebody tells me that they don't like my arrangement, I normally answer, "What would you like? I'm here for you." You know? And my brother was like, "What? You don't like what I wrote?" You know? He starts to get a little bit of an attitude. I mean, I could tell I grew up with him. I knew he wasn't happy. And it had occurred to me that I wanted to please Barbara. I wanted to protect my brother. And I thought, you know what? Barbara shouldn't be hearing this while we're learning it. Her ears are so in tune that she's hearing a half of a performance. So I mentioned to Hank Sakala, who's the engineer, turn off our mic and shut the door between the booth so she couldn't hear. And then I said to the singers, "Let's get this down. I don't want Barbara to hear this until we're killing it." So we kill it, and I tell Hank to turn on the mic, and she goes, "I love it. You fixed it. It's great." You know? So we sing this, and then we go in to listen to, after the take, we go into the booth to listen to the playback. And Barbara's sitting in the producer's seat, and we call it the desk, but it's a board. It's a soundboard, and there's usually a place for the producer. And she had her hand on the board, and I noticed that she had the most beautiful hands I'd ever seen in my life at that time. It was the truth. And my mom always said, this is where my mom came in with great stuff. She said, "Honey, if you notice something that you like about someone, tell them. Even if they're a complete stranger, it'll make their day." So I saw her beautiful hands, and I said, "Oh my God, Barbara, your hands are beautiful." Well, she read the energy from that, you know? And she looked up at me and she said, "Why, thank you."
Mm.
And then where this came from, I don't know, but there was an open door. And I said, do they scratch backs? And she said, why? Yes, they do. And I said, well, mine's available. And she got up from her producer's chair, had me sit down in it, and started scratching my back. So beautiful. But to me, that was a human moment. That wasn't a Barbra Streisand, Tommy Baylor moment. That was two human beings appreciating each other.
Beautiful.
And being of service. And it was so funny because we did about 4 or 5 songs that night. And every time I'd walk into the booth after a take, she'd get up and I'd sit down and she'd scratch my back. And I thought at the moment, if I were to even consider consciously that Barbra Streisand is scratching my back, she'd stop. She'd stop.
Of course.
It was a beautiful moment. And that's why I'm talking about my relationship is to people. That's, I worked with Michael Jackson for 33 years. And my brother did too. And we both just felt him and he felt us. It was never a lot of talk. And yet I learned so much. Michael and Quincy Jones are the two people that I've learned the most about life from, other than my father. It was amazing. He had me hire 44 voices for this song that he'd written. It was an anthem. It still hasn't been released. And Michael was like that. He was a little bit like Leonardo. He would paint something until he got to the point where he knew that he wasn't physically ready. And he put it away. And people thought he discarded it. But he would take it back and paint it at another time in his life. And tell you the truth, he painted most of the Mona Lisa in something like 2 days or 3 days or something. And he gave the commission fees back to the husband and said, no, I'm keeping this. And it was with him when he died 16 years later. And he was still making brush strokes. And that's the way Michael was. And to have the pleasure to work with people with that sort of sensitivity and a self-approval that it's okay because nobody else is going to understand. Why did you stop painting that? Why don't you release that song? That's a great song. Oh my God, your vocal's great. What's wrong with you? These are the people that are on the marketing side and there's nothing wrong with them. God bless them. We need them. But they're not expected to understand what you're giving them. And that's what I love about Quincy and I loved about Michael is that they wouldn't turn it over until they were proud of it. We're ready to have this baby, right? We put it in your hands.
Oh, love it.
Tom, I'm so grateful for you today showing and sharing these deep stories. It's like for me, it's like an experience of going into a well, and then at the bottom, there's this like deep well that I get to drink from and enrich my soul and my awareness and how I live life. So thank you so much for sharing these beautiful experiences with your father, your mother, your life experiences. So,
yeah.
Thank you both. And you know what? Like it's always been with us, and every great relationship I've ever had, regardless of age, gender, whatever, it's always a two-way street. And you guys are a two-way street for me. I feel so comfortable when I come to your house.
Oh, and we just love that.
I love it too.
Love
oh my
that.
God.
We miss you when
always magical times.
Yes. Yeah, we'll be back at it.
Yeah, get back soon, okay? Once
Absolutely.
the doors start opening, okay?
Yes.
Stories, love the way that you love and speak about love.
Thank you, Suzanne.
And share that love.
Well, and I must say that it's easier for me to talk about. I think we're in the subjects we're into tonight because you somehow draw that out of me. That's where I feel, you know, I want to express myself when I'm with you. While I might be with somebody else who I enjoy totally, you know what I mean? But I love our relationships we have had with your whole family. I just so cherish it. And I got to meet your parents.
Yeah.
I love your dad challenged me too, man. Woo! It was like, who the hell are you? It was, but the whole thing, what I loved about that evening is that I felt challenged and I understood where he was coming from to a degree. But I just felt that I was being tested. And I think when I'm being tested, the best thing I can be is myself.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And we ended up being close that night.
Yeah.
It was beautiful. He makes you walk through fire, but man, it's worth it.
Yeah.
It's just, you know, we have a friend who, and you might know him too. He's been to some, he's been to the Woodstock. He's been to one of the first Woodstocks, and he was
the only one.
oh, what am I saying? Yes, the only Woodstock he's been to. And he's a musician and just a beautiful soul. And he sings a song, and the song
Fantuzzi.
His name is Fantuzzi. And he sings a song, and the words are, "It's only love or a calling for love."
Yes.
That's all it ever is. It's only love or a calling for love.
Amen.
So that's
Amen.
all it ever is. All it ever is.
Well, I'm grateful for your love, and you both have my love.
Thank you, brother.
Thank you.
And everyone who's watching today, my love and our love is with you. And thanks for dropping.
Pretty obvious.
Yeah.
You know what's so funny, when somebody wanted to play me a piece of music, and he started to explain to me what this music was. I said, "You don't explain music, man. Play the fucking thing for me." If you have to explain it, it's not music. How do you explain a painting? You know, and over here I did, you know, it's like, what the hell?
Do you remember the dance? Do you remember this? Do they know what song you wrote for Michael Jackson? Did you share that?
I don't think I did. I wrote this signature ballad, "She's Out of My Life." Yes. And I remember you danced in the yurt. You danced it in the yurt one night and put me on a different planet. Well, I mean, it was just your, I'm not talking about the steps of but it was just you, what you became when you gave yourself to this. And all your love came out of your body in these most glorious, glorious movements. Oh my God. Yeah, I will never forget that, Suzanne.
Thank you. Well, you inspired me through those words and that song that just, it took me back. And I remember hearing it. And I remember stages in my life when that song meant so much to me. She's out of my life. It just filled my soul with meaning. So to have you there, to be able to, like you said, don't just play the song, be the song. And so that was my honoring of you and your genius in bringing that. And Michael sang it so well. And
that night it was your genius. It was. I had heard that song 1,000 times, but that night it was just coming through. Your energy was just the most beautiful, beautiful. Yeah, I'll never forget that night. We have a lot of those memories.
Yes, we do.
And we're gonna make some more.
We got more to go.
We're gonna wrap up. And we're going to send you off. And friends, thank you so much for joining us. Tommy, all my love and blessings, brother. And I'm looking forward to hug again soon, okay?
Yes.
Well, thank you. My love and blessings to you. And I'm eager to open the borders so we can be in person.
Yeah, soon.
Yes. Warmest embrace to you.
Thank you. My love to you.
All of you.
Thank you.